Hello there and welcome to our L24 special coverage over the Ukraine-Russia war, the so-called by the Russians special military operation. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has told all civilians still living in parts of eastern Donetsk region under Ukrainian control to evacuate. Speaking during a late-night address from Kiev, Mr. Zelensky warned of intense fighting in the region. To the other side of this war, Russia says it has invited representatives of the United Nations and the Red Cross to investigate the deaths of Ukrainian prisoners of war, many of whom were members of the Azov soldiers who surrendered in Mariupol at a detention center in Olenivka, in a Russian-occupied sector of Donetsk. Kiev insists that Russia was behind the deaths, while Russians-backed separatists alleged more than 50 prisoners of war were killed in Ukrainian missile attack. The headquarters of Russia's Black Sea Fleet in the Crimean city of Sevastopol was hit by a drone, injuring 5 people. City Governor Mikhail said that Russia marks Navy Day on Sunday, and Razavoryos said that festivities in the city had now been cancelled for security reasons. To analyze all this information, I'm joined live by Mr. Ruslan Bortnik, Director of the Ukrainian Institute of Politics from Kiev, Ukraine, and Upamanyu Basu, Assistant Professor of Political Science from New Delhi, India. Gentlemen, thank you so much for accepting our invitation to this debate. The discussion begins right after this break. And before we delve into our discussion, let me read for you this piece of information. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called Saturday for evacuation of eastern Donetsk province. Hundreds of thousands of people, including children and the elderly, remain in combat zones of larger Donbas region, which includes Donetsk and Lugansk. The region has seen fierce fighting in recent days, particularly in the eastern town of Bakhmut.
Hundreds of thousands of people and children are still in the areas of heavy fighting in the Donetsk region. Many people refuse to leave, so the decision to leave must be taken at some point.
Mr. Ruslan, since you are in Ukraine, I will be starting with you. You are looking to the battlegrounds map. It's clearly seen that the majority of the eastern part of Ukraine has been taken under control of the Russians, and no one can deny this. But in some areas, still Ukrainian troops fighting and resisting this invasion. Now, after 7 months almost since the beginning of this war, what is your interpretation to the coming days and what is going to happen?
Hello, colleagues. At first, I want to say that the final stage of battle for Donbas is going on. So Ukrainian president asked people to move from Donbas to save their life, from the first reason, and to the second reason, because Ukrainian government is not willing that people should be left on the occupied territory if the Russian forces will obtain this territory. Because I want to remind you that the main goal of second stage of so-called Russian special warfare operation is to obtain in Donbas. And Russia now is doing all she can for obtaining Donbas, and there is extremely heavy clashes in Donbas today. Generally, we have two trends, political trends for the last month. The first trend is positional warfare, because starting from 7th of July, when the Russia advanced Lysychansk, there is no big moves, there is no big changes of area of control. And the second trend is a productive agreement on the export of Ukrainian and Russian grain, which showed that if there is a consent and desire of parties, Russia Federation, United States, NATO, European Union, then the party can conclude agreement between themselves even now. This is a positive precedent. After all, if the parties can agree on a harvest, to be honest, about money, they will be able to agree on a peace to save people's lives.
Perfect, quite understood. Mr. Basu, you are in Asia, as I am in Africa, so we do have a different understanding for the situation. But don't you think now that the war is taking another phase? It's the war of the whole continent. Majority of the Western European countries indirectly joined this war, but so far they have failed to make any progress to stop the Russians. In fact, to some extent, they make it even worse with their unsuccessful policy of sanctions. What are you saying about this?
Right. Thank you for the question. So if you look at the politics of sanctions, I think I had mentioned this earlier in some shows as well, that sanctions is considered to be the most risk-free approach towards mediation, and if you want to curb any regime to having authoritative tendencies. Now, the problem with sanctions is that you have to have clear alternatives if you are restricting Russian embargoes or anything like that. Here, Russian oil, if you take a very clear example, clear alternatives are very less likely to completely balance out the indifferences between the markets, if I talk just about global oil supply. So sanctions can only work where there are clear alternatives. Coming to the second point, that the failures of sanctions have had history of failures as well as very limited success as well. But if you ask what is the alternative to a sanction, it does not have a very clear answer, because another approach is direct mediation, military intervention, which is not possible in this case. So sanction becomes the necessary evil here. But the success rate of sanctions, because of the larger consistency that is required with it, for example, if you look at the history of Iran and sanctions, you look at examples like Riyadh as well, Saudi Arabia, the kind of relation US and Saudi Arabia had. So sanctions only works very slowly. It cannot have a very fast result as well. So here, if we are expecting a faster result, it will be difficult.
Thank you so much for this explanation. Now let's move to the second point to be discussed. 17 ships ready to move goods from ports in Odessa. A total of 580 tons of grain will be exported from the first time since the start of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, after last week Turkey and the United Nations breakthrough agreements.
President Volodymyr Zelensky visited one of Ukraine's main Black Sea ports in Odessa region on Friday, a week after a deal was struck with Russia, Turkey and the United Nations to create safe corridors for ships to export grains that have been trapped in the country since the start of the Russian special military operation in Ukraine.
The first vessel, the first ship, is being loaded since the beginning of the war. This is a Turkish ship, and I am standing in its background. This indicates that the port has started working. The most important thing for us is that the port and people work. You see that many people, I will say frankly, that everyone is happy, that they went to work and have a job, that the process has started.
As the Battle of Donbas continue, Russia and Ukraine accused each other Friday of shelling a prison in the separatist region of eastern Ukraine, an attack that reportedly killed dozens of Ukrainian military prisoners who were captured after the fall of the southern port city in May. Kyiv called for the United Nations and the Red Cross to be allowed to investigate the deaths of the Ukrainian prisoners of war and called for Russia to be recognized as a state sponsor of terrorism.
I would add for myself that there should be a clear legal recognition of Russia as state sponsoring terrorism. I am especially turning to the United States of America. A decision is needed. It is needed now. Russia has proven by numerous terrorist acts that it is the largest source of terrorism in today's world. This is a fact.
The attack was condemned by European Union's Foreign Policy Chief Joseph Borrell on Friday, calling for a stop for the atrocities committed by the Russian armed forces. As the Moscow-installed military administration ruling confirmed their plans of holding a referendum on joining Russia and Ukraine's Kherson region, the UK Ministry of Defense, in its daily intelligence report, claimed that the referendum would be conducted by autumn 2022. It's worth recalling that Kherson, an important port on the Black Sea, has been fully under Russian control since early March, just weeks after Moscow launched its special military operation.
Coming to you, Mr. Basso, if the grain shipments pass through the Black Sea as it is supposed successfully, would this bring a serious boost of confidence for Moscow as well as for Kiev, as the Turkish Foreign Minister said yesterday? Will this be helpful between the two sides?
It will definitely be helpful, that's for sure. But as you rightly said, this particular agreement is already a larger self-boost of confidence for the Russian side. Because even right now, the kind of repercussions that has happened because of the wheat and the grains shortage in the entire world, especially the Middle Eastern countries and the African countries as well, you see that there is a higher authoritative posturing of Russian forces in these regions. So here, even this joint agreement, it will help Ukraine as well, the economy as well, because it has been shipping. It was not able to ship larger quantities, which was disrupting the entire global supply chain. But it is definitely boosting the Russian morale, and it will have larger repercussions if you look at the security dilemma in that region.
Understood. Mr. Ruslan, will Russia honor the deal as Blinken urged Lavrov to do so, or there will be obstacles to fulfill this requirement? Last time Russia said that Ukraine didn't respect the agreements they have reached. What about this time and this deal? Do you think that it's going to be a successful one?
It's a very difficult question. Of course, Russia is talking about the Minsk agreement, which was made in 2014, 2015, and which were not fulfilled. It was also the reason for this war. For my side, from my opinion, for nowadays, not all sides are ready to make an agreement on Ukraine and in general to stop this war, because Russia is wanted to divide the sphere of influence in the Europe. United States and Great Britain especially is not ready to do this. So this war will go on, but we should understand that people, ordinary people, they are willing to peace. So governments from the different sides will show they're ready to make a peace agreement. They will be talking a lot about this, but now unfortunately there is no circumstances, enough circumstances for such type of peace, general global agreement.
Mr. Basso, as a direct question, why there isn't another country that could manage to play the role as a mediator between Kiev and Moscow as that one of Turkey? What is special about the Turkish side in this war, and what is special about its position between the East and the West, as Putin claimed?
Right. Turkey has always been interested in being the mediator, because for a country like Turkey, the costs are high on both ends. If you look at the kind of relationship it has had with Russia, the history is very strong. And also its support towards joining the NATO, and also its membership and the kind of relationship it shares with the EU countries. But since these relations are very conflicting with each other, Turkey remains the country which seeks to gain a lot from the normalcy conditions to come up between these two countries. So that's why it has been very energetic. And also Ukraine, from some extent, has not really shied out from saying that it is wanting to have direct talks with Putin as well. And it has no reservations if Turkey becomes this mediator country, and it already has become the mediator country with respect to the shipments as well. They are all going towards Turkey. And also, if you look at the geographical areas, the kind of region Turkey is in, the connect between the Mediterranean Sea and the Black Sea, it has a very huge economic angle towards it as well.
Very good indeed. Now, let's tackle another topic in our discussion. The governor of Crimean Peninsula claimed that the Russian Black Sea Fleet headquarters in Sevastopol was attacked by Ukraine. The attack took place on Russia's Navy Day. The governor of the peninsula added that all celebrations have been cancelled for safety reasons. The Russian Federal Security Services has reportedly launched an investigation over the incident. Mr. Ruslan, in one hand, you can see that Russia is winning this war, and on the other hand, Ukraine still have a lot of surprises and counterattacks, such as this one on Crimea. How could Ukraine troops manage to make this attack?
I don't think that it's Ukrainian troops was able to make this attack. I think it's something from the inside of Crimea Peninsula. Because there is too long distance to Ukrainian controlled territory, to the Sevastopol now. I think it's like a rebels movement, something like this. Or maybe special forces are working on the Crimea, Ukrainian special forces. But in any case, this situation should be used by Russia like a new casus of belli. A new reason to growing up the escalation, because Russia says that Crimea is absolutely territory of Russia, and Russia is ready to defend this territory or even by nuclear weapon. So it's very dangerous situation, and it should be used like a casus of belli, and we should look for it very, very carefully because there should be also some kind of misinformation on play of different kinds of different sides special forces.
Perfect. Coming to you, Mr. Basser, previously Mr. Putin stated that he is not taking the period of this military operation into consideration. I mean, he's not worried about the time it might take. He said that we are ready in all fields to take as long as they want. Most important, we will reach our goals, which is to have a full control of the Donbas region and to end the Ukrainian threat and its Nazism, as he claimed. Don't you think this is a very wise words in terms of strategic projects?
Actually, if you look at wise and unwise in the world of like geopolitics, it always has this assumption that everything follows a rational choice. So here the problem is that there will be irrational choices in geopolitics, and here the example of Russian invasion Ukraine is an irrational choice for the entire world, but it seems rational from their geopolitical and cultural and also historical perspective. So here the war will not end from Russia's side, because look at the kind of conditioning and the kind of talks that are happening in EU, that it is literally breaking with respect to the kind of sanctions and the kind of difference in opinions within the EU countries as well regarding this particular invasion. Now here, rationality does not have any logic with respect to these choices that these leaders are making. So this assumption that everything will have a very rational, logical choice in world politics is proved to be a fallacy after if you analyze all these global conflicts.
Quite understand. Now moving on to tackle the economic side. The Russian gas giant Gazprom said on Saturday that it has stopped deliveries to Latvia, saying that the Baltic nation has violated of terms of gas extraction. Latvia refused to comply with Moscow's ruble payment demand, which insists that European countries switch to paying for gas in ruble. In the same context, Gazprom Deputy CEO Vitaly Merkov said that Siemens failed to return the Nord Stream gas turbine to Russia on time after a mandatory repair.
The time between overhauls for Siemens engines is 25,000 hours. After that, a mandatory overhaul in the factory is required. In December last year, Siemens engine number 073 was delivered to a factory in Canada for repair. We expected to get it back in May. This engine has not returned to Russia so far, due to anti-Russian sanctions and without the consent of Gazprom. It was sent from Canada not to Russia, but to Germany.
Staying with you, Mr. Bass, Russia has cut the amount of the natural gas it sends to Europe by closing down a turbine on the Nord Stream 1 pipeline. Critics accuse the Russian government of using gas as a political weapon. So, to this point, what can Europe do? I mean, how is Europe reacting to the supply cuts, and what is the alternative?
So the reactions have been very straightforward with respect to limiting the kind of resources that were shared with Russia. And also, like the recent news are saying that most of these countries are saying that they will cut their consumption by 15%. Now, you see an example like that in a city of Germany where people are literally shutting off public heating systems and bathing in cold water, cold showers. So that is the kind of reaction that most of the EU countries will face. But there are also some countries who are not very dependent on Russian oil, who have converted to the LNG type of fueling systems as well, and they will be less susceptible to making drastic changes. But here, as I warned earlier as well, these divisions of priorities will be very stark in most of these EU countries.
To you, Mr. Ruslan, the cut of gas supplies, beyond that, how Ukraine is living now. The economy of the country and the infrastructure kind of has been destroyed. So how Ukrainians are serving so far, under what kind of conditions, and if the grain shipments pass through the Black Sea, how this will help the economy after all this period?
And if the grain agreement will work, Ukraine will obtain near $1 billion United States dollars every month. It's near 5% of GDP of Ukraine till the end of year. And of course, it's very important for in our country. But we should remember that Russia will obtain more because many sanctions on the Russian grain, Russian chemistry, Russian banks, Russian oil even was declined in this time, in time of this agreement also. But talking about Ukrainian economy, our budget, state budget, is absolutely dependent of Western support. More than 60% of incomes in a Ukrainian budget nowadays is support from United States. It's money from Europe Union, World Bank, and many other financial structures and partners abroad. Near 10-20% it's issue of money. We just spread a lot of new money. Our national bank just publish new money every month for $1 billion United States dollars also. And then only 20% of our state budget, this is money from our taxes and from a normal side. So we are absolutely dependent from the Western support, and our economy situation now is not bad. But we are not sure in our future because we are not sure in gathering and this help in the future.
Mm-hmm. Don't you think that now, if Ukraine gain money again and its economy being boosted again, don't you think that the money they have been given by the US, EU, it will be retaken? I mean, it is considered now like a debt. What are you saying about that?
Yes, it's a huge problem, and our government these days are talking behind the curtains, are talking about declining these debts or postponing them to the future, because we have a big technical default last week of our biggest state company, national gas company. And because this company was not able to pay $300 million United States dollars, and our country is very close to default. In the future, these debts should be a huge problem for our development because we are not be able to take additional money to our development.
Mm-hmm. Understood. Now let's tackle another topic, probably the last one because we have a limited time. Speaking on the local radio, Viktor Orban, Hungary's prime minister, announced Friday that he will sign a new deal with Russia in the coming months, which will supply the country with nearly 1 billion cubic meters of gas. The new deal comes on the top of 15 years deal Budapest signed with Russia's state-owned energy giant Gazprom last year to supply around 4.5 billion cubic meters of gas per year. Coming back to you, Mr. Ruslan, Hungary was one of few countries within the EU that refused to follow the policy of sanctions imposed on Russia because Hungary relies heavily on the Russian gas. For more than 50% or 55% depend on the Russian gas. So, to this point, will the new agreements give Russia more power over the sanctions and EU countries? And do you really think that Russia is blackmailing the EU countries with the energy sector?
Winter is close, and in Europe this winter starting from the August, it looks like, because my colleague a lot to talk about. And such countries like Hungary or Turkey or even India, they are looking their own benefit in this situation, and they are looking here their independence policy in this situation. It's absolutely normal, for my opinion. Even if this is very painful for Ukraine. I'm sure that European Union should be looking for another type of sanction, should rescind this sanction, because this winter should be extremely hard in Europe, and this winter should kill or damage a lot of European Union economy, which will not be more successful in international markets with these high prices for energy resources.
Quite understood. Mr. Basso, talking about the gas deliveries to Europe, Biden last tour and its main goal in his last tour to the Middle East is to convince Saudi Arabia of the need to increase global oil supplies to ease the energy crisis sparked by the Russian invasion of Ukraine and to reinforce U.S. position in the region. So, to this point, do you think that it will ensure another alternative, though Saudi Arabia offers nothing extra?
No, it is a good alternative from United States respect, because it was very difficult for the Biden administration to start talking with Saudi Arabia again, and especially if you keep in context the previous allegations on Saudi Arabia's regime on human rights violations. So the idea is very clear that Saudi Arabia has been a good alternative, but as mentioned earlier, the balances has to be checked. The balance is still not adding up, that even if Saudi Arabia, if you look at the political leanings of Saudi Arabia towards Russia and China also, it becomes a good political decision, but I don't know how economically it will be sustainable.
Okay, couple of minutes to reach the end of this discussion. Mr. Ruslan, what is your interpretation for the coming days in what is called between Russia and Ukraine a special military operation? Russia on one side, they are claiming that they are defending their national security. Ukraine on the other side, they are claiming that they are fighting for their freedom. So, in your point of view, put us in a picture.
Russian goals for this operation is quite straight. Russia tried to push European Union and the United States to divide the Eastern Europe for the sphere of influence. But Russia is not very successful in this operation, because we see that Ukrainian government and Ukrainian state is still working, and there is not a huge crisis for security for European Union and United States. And from Ukrainian side, of course, you are right that Russia is slowly but advancing new Ukrainian territories. But if we remember from historical side that Hitler's Germany of Hitler, they moved to Soviet territory more than 3 years. New advances, and they should be defeated. So the end of this war is not clear, and no one, to be honest, should say how this war should be ended.
Understood. Mr. Basu, briefly, can we say that Russia is winning its operation against not only Ukraine but all the West? taken into consideration, it's been almost 7 months and nothing has changed. Russia is moving forward.
See, it's very clear that it is unfair comparison. Now, some people have this problem that even calling it a war is difficult because the sides are not equal. It's not balanced. As mentioned earlier, that there has been failures from Russia's end as well in this kind of invasion. But if you look at the current scenario and the kind of reactions that are coming in from the EU countries as well, the kind of reactions that are coming in with respect to handling this economic crisis that is a byproduct of this invasion, Russia unfortunately has a dominating effect here. So I will rest my case with that statement.
Perfect. Mr. Bassor from India, Mr. Ruslan from Ukraine, thank you ever so much for taking part in our discussion. Thank you, dear viewers, for keeping it here with us on L24 News. Take care of yourself and bye-bye.